George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Well, today, March 10th, is a commemoration of the passing of Harriet Tubman, Moses of our people. And we are so pleased to be joined by Michele Jones Galvin. She and her mom, Joyce Stokes Jones, wrote a book called Beyond the Underground and Harriet Moses of our people. And we're so, I got it right, Michele, didn't I?
Got it right.
Michele, really excited to have you here and celebrate Harriet Tubman. Before we do that, I know that you lost your mom recently, and so I want to give you a chance to really just, I want to acknowledge that you're dealing with that.
And thank you so much. Mom passed on June 27th, 2023. So it's only been a little over 6 months. And she was so much a part of our life, meaning that she was really incorporated into our family. We saw her every day. And she was just such a joy, and we miss her terribly. Our beloved mom just provided us with so much strength and so much courage and so much perseverance in terms of whatever your goals are, go after them, and maybe even think about Aunt Harriet in terms of, just get right in there and keep going. And that's what she gave to my brothers and sisters and I for her entire life. And she passed away at the age of 93. It's funny because the day before she passed, she was here with me. It was a beautiful day out. I was out in the garden. She was in the sunroom. She was counting her little coins and doing her little word search puzzles and just having a regular, wonderful day. And by 9 o'clock the next morning, she did not answer the phone. So she passed away peacefully in her sleep. So it is hard. It's not something that'll go away very quickly. There is that sense of loss. But as my mom used to say, well, each one of us are going to have to go through it one day. So, we just have to learn to deal with it and continue to love her as we always have.
Hold up that book, and I know that this is one of the gifts that you will always have, is the two of you. I mean, she was talking about this book pretty much her whole life. I mean,
pretty much her whole life. That's right. Pretty much her adult life. Yes.
Yeah, as long as I knew, she's, I'm working on this book, and so she and I crossed paths years ago when she worked at City Hall.
That's right. That's
Syracuse City Hall, I should say.
Yes, yes.
And so let's talk about the collaboration the two of you had on creating this historical fiction of Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, well, actually, the genre is creative nonfiction.
Excuse me, creative nonfiction.
Creative nonfiction, and it's a wonderful mix of family lore, memoir, and historical reconstruction. And that didn't happen overnight. Mom had been researching for years, trying to get to the bottom of how she was related to Harriet Tubman. We knew we were related. She knew she was related since she was a little girl, but she wanted to get right to, well, exactly how. And isn't it wonderful? God is good. And by the time we were able to pull all of the information together, we realized that Emery Stewart Elliott, some people in the family said that she was Aunt Harriet's niece. Others thought that she was a sister. So it was that question that really kept Mom going. And we were to find out that my mother's great-grandmother, Emery Stewart Elliott, was in fact a niece. So what does that mean? It means that her mother was a sister to Aunt Harriet, and the mother, Sophia, is my mother's great-great-grandmother. So we finally got the answer. The great-great-grandmother is actually the sister to Harriet Tubman, and that's how our line is related through Sophia.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I mean, just the joy. What does it mean to be part of that legacy?
Well, I guess when I first learned, I was a young girl. I think I was around the fourth grade when I really understood the fact that we were related, but it really, really was not until I started working with my mother and looking at her research and looking at her findings and interviewing her and being able to pull it all together in book form that I realized that my relationship with Aunt Harriet was just phenomenal. It was and is amazing to know her not only as the iconic figure, but that she really is an aunt that I can now really feel. Um, it's just phenomenal. There's really nothing like it. Uh, for her to be the woman that she was, for her to do the things that she did, rescuing enslaved people, taking them from the South, the bowels of slavery, and taking them north to freedom. The work that she did in the Civil War was outstanding. I have a friend of mine who was a colonel in the army, and he read the book and he said, Michelle, from what I understand of what your aunt did, he said, I would have wanted to be led by her.
Mm.
Those three steamboat attacks on the rice plantations, which were huge plantations, thousands of slaves were down there in South Carolina, and to be able to go behind the enemy lines to get intelligence from the enslaved people there, and then be able to take that back and be able to destroy their munitions and all kinds of things down there was really phenomenal. And she was a military leader.
Yeah,
So
people don't
yeah,
realize that, right? They don't
yeah,
realize that. Yeah.
most people don't know that she actually served in the Civil War. No, they don't know that she did that. And when they do, they want to concentrate on the fact that she did nurse the wounds of the wounded soldiers and she did cook, but that's not why they brought her down there. They brought her down there. They asked for her to come down there so that she could gain the trust of the slaves who worked on those plantations down there. And she did an incredible job. And by the way, George, even after doing all of those uh, activities, 700 slaves were freed.
Mm. Mm.
700 were freed.
Let's go.
Now that's different from the enslaved people that she freed on the Underground Railroad. So we're talking, she in fact impacted hundreds of people and their family lives. She changed the landscape of what it meant to be enslaved and then go to freedom. I mean, it's an incredible, she has a very storied life.
She was a veteran. She was
Yes,
uh, I
yes.
mean, they called her a spy, right? So I don't know how
Oh,
you
absolutely.
yeah,
Scout
right.
and spy.
Spy
Scout
for the
and
for
spy.
the Union, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
just a great leader
yes.
for our times. And when you think about that legacy and that coming through you, I know, like you said, you don't appreciate it until you can really feel it, and once you
It,
really connected it.
yes, yes, yes. And, and mom was always infatuated and admired and loved Aunt Harriet. I mean, since she was a young girl, she didn't really work at it until she was in her adult life, where someone actually challenged her, George. The
Mm,
man, you probably would know, I'm not giving any names, but he actually said to my mom, prove it.
mm.
Said, okay, buddy. And she proved it, you know?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I mean, so of course the Harriet Tubman home, and she's buried in Auburn, New York. The
Yes.
Harriet Tubman home in Auburn uh,
Yes.
came to Auburn because of William Seward, who was then
Right.
Secretary of State. And for
Right.
those who don't know, he bought Alaska, right?
Yes.
But of course,
Yes.
William Seward House in Auburn, and that is such a great legacy. But when you think about, again, your book, like you said creative nonfiction. What is it that you want people to take away from your book, or what are some of the things in your book that you think readers would really find
Right.
fascinating?
Right. Well, now that we're in Women's History Month, I think it's really important um, to say that our book is unique because it's written through a family lens.
Mm.
Other historic books are wonderful. They get the iconic figure of Aunt Harriet right, but what they miss is that relationships were very important to her, particularly with her family. Even
Mm.
boarders and people visiting, they were treated like family. So family was very important to her. She was a daughter, she was a sister, she was a wife, she was a cousin, she was a friend. And our book tries to explore all of those relationships. So what you come away with, George, is a better picture of her as a woman and as a person who is really ordinary, but who did extraordinary things. We give you the flavor of who she was as a woman.
Beyond the Underground, and Harriet Moses. Our
Yes.
people. I always say Aunt when I'm talking about the book title, but I never
Yeah.
say Aunt any other time.
Well, that's funny, George, because um, when you say aunt, I immediately know you mean Aunt Harry. Um, but there was an article that was written by a man in his 80s who lived in Auburn.
Uh-huh.
He was telling the story about his walking with his father when he was a young boy, and they would go past Aunt Harriet's house. And he said, as a little boy, I kind of was a little afraid of her. He says, but he said, my father would stop, he would speak to her. And before you knew it, I was calling her Aunt Harriet, and she would come to our church sometimes. And so he felt very, very comfortable with her. And it was also said that it wasn't just Black people, white people, anybody in the community. She was known as Aunt Harriet.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
how do people get the book, Michele?
Well, it's wonderful. Here's the cover. And can I just talk about the cover a little
Please
bit?
do.
This is just a beautiful picture, two pictures. One is Aunt Harriet when she's in her 90s, probably about a year before she passed away. And this was my mother and my favorite picture of her. And the one that you see on the lower end is a picture that was just found in Emily Howland's estate papers, and it went for auction. And the Smithsonian Museum of African American Culture is now the owner of that photo. So this is what she looked like when she was doing her rescue work, the picture at the bottom. So we thought that the two kind of showed Aunt Harriet in her fullness of life as a younger woman and then also as an older woman.
So, how do you get the book?
Oh, sorry. I was so, yes. All we have to do is go to mosesofherpeople.com, and you will be introduced not only to the book, but my mother and my journey to write it, and you can purchase it there.
MosesOfHerPeople.com.
Yes, all one word.
MosesOfHerPeople.com. Michele
Yes,
Jones Galvin, the great, great, great grandniece.
yes, yes, yes. You got it.
I wanted to get because I wanted to get
Yes,
all the greats in
yes,
of
yes, yes,
Harriet Tubman
yes,
on this Harriet Tubman Day
yes.
here in the state of New York, but also around the
Around
country.
the country. Yes,
And get this book from the family's
yes.
perspective. And hey, Auburn, let's get that house going.
Yes, we're waiting. We're
Okay, we've
waiting.
been waiting a minute for that. Come on now.
That's right. That's right,
All
George.
right. Thank you, Michele, for
Yes,
sharing.
and thank you so much for having me.
All right now, inspiration for the nation.
Okay. Good night.